Little girl washes dishes alone. Her father's shocking discovery revealed a family secret that Tr. Emily stood in the cramped kitchen, the smell of soap enveloping her like a comforting shroud as she scrubbed another plate. Outside, the rain poured relentlessly, creating a rhythmic patter against the window that mirrored her own restless heart. In the midst of the swirling bubbles, her dreams of becoming a scientist bubbled up, fighting against the weight of her reality. Her father, Tom, had sacrificed so much for their family. Each evening, as she washed dish after dish, she could hear the door creak open, feel him retreating from the exhaustion of factory hours into the familiar setting of their modest home. He worked tirelessly to put food on the table, but Emily often wondered at what expense. The sound of his heavy steps sent a jolt through her. She longed for him to acknowledge her dreams, to inspire her instead of prioritizing survival over aspiration. With every plate she washed, her internal conflict deepened. Was she merely a dishwasher destined to live within the confines of this small town? Or could she break free, armed with the scientific knowledge her heart craved? When Tom climbed into the attic that rainy evening in search of forgotten holiday decorations, Emily felt an unease building within her, an unshakable feeling that something significant was about to happen. She couldn't shake the intuition, perhaps it was the unsettling stillness that often settled over her. The intensity of waiting was almost unbearable. A disturbance resounded from above, followed by the hollow thud of a box hitting the wooden floor. What was he looking for? Moments later, Tom returned, face pale, trembling hands clutching an old journal, its pages yellowed with the passage of time. As he flipped through the fragile sheets, Emily felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Horrifying thoughts crossed her mind. What if it was something tragic? Why did he look so shattered? She hesitated, battling her curiosity and dread, and in the back of her mind, she couldn't help but wonder if any of that would change her own future. The quiet moment stretched on, and before she could contain herself, she half yelled, "Dad, what's wrong?" His eyes, usually filled with warmth, now glistened with pain as he recounted his mother's unrealized dream of becoming a chemist. He revealed too much of what was left unsaid in their household, the emotional sacrifices, the weight of family duty. With each word, Emily felt her dreams slipping further away, an absolute disconnect forming between her aspirations and the realities around her. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Tom's revelations paved a treacherous path. Emily could smell the fumes of disdain that wound their way into their kitchen, echoing in the community's biases. Little girls don't become scientists. In school, at the science fair, she carried a volcano project, determined to prove otherwise, but through the whispers and rolling eyes, she felt the sharp sting of belittlement paint her confidence in shades of gray. Anxiety gnawed at her, doubt loomed like a thundercloud, blocking the sunlight of possibilities. Even Tom, who stood by her side, was caught in an uncomfortable battle between tradition and change. As he fought the well-worn mindset he had inherited, Emily could sense the undertow of uncertainty pulling at them both. Each day became heavier, each moment a test of their resolve. Would they rise above the deep-set expectations or remain shackled by a legacy of abandoned dreams? The storm was building, but was the world ready for their defiance? As she braced herself against the current of self-doubt, a nagging question remained: would her father's newfound commitment be enough to conquer the barriers set before them? The answer felt just beyond her grasp, lingering like the rain outside, as the shadows in her kitchen whispered promises and threats. Emily tightened her grip on the sponge, her thoughts racing in tandem with the relentless downpour outside. The journal, now resting on the kitchen table, had stirred something deep within her, a mix of inspiration and fear, igniting the very embers of ambition she thought she'd buried beneath layers of duty and family expectations. "Dad, "I want you to take me to the science fair this weekend," she blurted out, surprising herself with the urgency in her voice. Overwhelmed by her own determination, she locked eyes with Tom, searching for the approval she desperately longed for. "I want to present a project that actually means something." Tom looked taken aback, as if her words had caught him off guard. "Are you sure that's wise, Emily? You know how people are about 'I don't care what they think, Dad. This is about me.'" The moment those words left her mouth, she felt a rush of empowerment. This was not just a jab at her father's hesitation, it was a commitment to herself, a defiant stand against everything that tried to confine her. But he began, his brow furrowed with the concern of a parent molded by the expectations of their own upbringing. "No buts," Emily interrupted, asserting herself more than she ever had before. "When you shared Grandma's dreams, it made me realize I don't want to end up as someone who leaves aspects of myself unexplored. I want to be more than what tradition allows." Tom sighed deeply, the weight of their unspoken fears hanging heavily in the air. "All right," he finally conceded, although his voice carried a note of reluctance. "But we'll need to gather materials and work hard, Emily. This won't be easy." With every word, Emily felt a rush of clarity and resolve. She raced to her room, rifling through scraps of paper, eager to piece together the threads of knowledge she had long tucked away. She envisioned her project an experiment that showcased not just her understanding of chemistry but also the passion that had been brewing within her for as long as she could remember. Days turned into nights as she organized her thoughts, formulas, and hypotheses. Every free moment became an opportunity for learning, and she absorbed the science like a sponge. She dipped into her father's textbooks, each page a bridge to a realm previously shrouded in uncertainty. The connection between generations sparked something alive in her, a burning desire to defy the narrative that had shaped both her father and grandmother. As the fair approached, Emily could sense a shift within herself. The doubts from peers faded into a background hum, overshadowed by her growing conviction. Yet, remnants of fear lingered, lurking in the corners of her mind, echoing the familiar voices of doubt from her past. With each presentation practice, she fought against the cold grip of anxiety that clung to her. Will they judge my work? Do I belong in these spaces? The night before the fair, she glanced again at her father, who was deep in thought, the lines on his forehead etched with worry and pride. "Dad," she said softly, "what if I fail?" He looked up, his gaze steady, as if he was not merely witnessing a moment but remembering his own crossroads. "Failure is just a step, Emily. If you fall, you rise again. That's how scientists learn. Beyond failures, dreams begin." His words, low yet potent, took root in her conviction. This was her chance, both to reclaim her own aspirations and to honor the unfulfilled dreams of the women before her. As the sun set and the rain continued to pound on their roof, Emily took a deep breath and resolved to willingly confront whatever awaited her. Would this leap lead her closer to her dream, or would it beckon the very specter of doubt she'd fought so hard to silence? As she drifted into uneasy sleep, the echo of her father's wisdom swirled with the weight of impending judgment. Tomorrow, amidst the science fair's bustling chaos, she would face her moment of truth. Would she fly or fall? The answer awaited her on the other side, tantalizingly close yet impossibly distant. The morning light seeped through the curtains, painting the room in hues of hope and trepidation. Emily's stomach churned, the weight of anticipation mingled with the remnants of her anxiety. She had rehearsed her presentation countless times, yet the enormity of her decision pressed heavily on her shoulders. With each heartbeat, she stilled the voice that whispered fears of inadequacy and judgment. "Emily, let us go," Tom called from the kitchen. His voice was steady, yet she sensed unspoken worries lingering beneath the surface. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and forced herself to respond with a calm she didn't quite feel coming. She dressed quickly, her fingers fumbling with the buttons of her shirt, channeling her nerves into an urgency that had propelled her this far. Each action dripped with significance, Every minute detail mattered as she prepared to step into an arena that felt foreign and exhilarating. Seated in the passenger seat, she gazed out at the blurred scenery, lost in thoughts of the project she had labored over. What if her hypothesis was wrong? What if the experiment didn't work? Questions swirled, but amidst the chaos, a more profound realization took root. This was not merely about the project. It was about who she was becoming. As they approached the school, a sea of students greeted her, their excitement a stark counterpoint to her internal tumult. She unclenched her fists, surprisingly aware of the heat rising in her cheeks. Classmates milled about, displaying their projects with confidence, while others exchanged casual remarks. Their ease only amplified her self-doubt. "Stay focused," she muttered under her breath, casting a determined glance at her father. Tom caught her eye, offering an encouraging nod that momentarily steadied her resolve. Navigating through the hall, she spotted her designated area, an unwieldy table cluttered with materials. The sight invoked a wave of both fear and exhilaration. This was her moment, a chance to assert her identity outside the confines of familial expectations. She arranged her setup meticulously, every beaker and cork positioned with intention. Hours passed like a whirlwind as the fair began in earnest. Students floated around, exchanging theories and rivalries, while Emily tried to remain anchored in her own world. She found it easy to get lost in her project, explaining her process to curious onlookers, overwhelmed by the brightness of their interest. Then, it happened. A confident girl with a cocky smirk strolled over. "So, what's this? Are you sure a science project is worth your time?" Her words dripped with condescension. Emily felt the color drain from her face, the earlier confidence threatened by the weight of judgment hanging in the balance. Before she could retreat into silence, something in her snapped. "It's not just a science project. It's a glimpse of what I can achieve when I stop letting others dictate what I'm capable of." The conviction in her voice surprised even her. She wasn't merely defending her work, she was asserting herself. The girl's smirk faltered, and for a moment, Emily reveled in that small victory. Perhaps she couldn't control how others perceived her, but she could control her response. As the words hung in the air between them, she sensed a shift not just in their interaction, but within herself. She stood taller, as if a weight had been lifted and her path clarified. The session progressed, and Emily met many students, engaging in discussions that sparkled with newfound enthusiasm. For each skeptical glance, she matched it with a proud presentation. As she lost herself in the flow of data and dramatic results, newfound ease settled over her. But just as she felt the tide turning, a familiar face emerged from the crowd. Martha, the queen bee of the science club, whose opinions carried substantial weight. Emily's heart raced, uncertainty coiling tightly around her throat. Would she simply invalidate everything she'd built in a moment? Martha approached, eyes analytical yet curious, and for a moment, the world narrowed down to their exchange. "What's your hypothesis?" she asked, dismissing Emily's earlier success with a flick of her wrist. "Actually, I believe." Emily hesitated, but then, remembering her father's words, she took a breath that resonated with unwavering determination. "I believe true progress stems from experimentation, something that requires courage to explore." At the edge of her thoughts, realization hit her. This moment was not just a presentation, it was about claiming her voice. This wasn't merely a chance to show her project, but to demonstrate her growth. As Martha's expression shifted from skepticism to intrigue, Emily sensed the ground beneath her shifting again. Could she really have the power to reshape how others saw her? But then she felt another question creep in. What if they still judged her harshly, despite her efforts? This nagging uncertainty pricked at her resolve, and she thought about the stakes involved. Could she battle through her doubts again? Would she muster the courage to confront this evaluation head-on? And as the fair swirled around her, the core struggle distilled into a single moment of clarity. She was not just seeking validation. She was paving her own path. With a firm grip on her project, she prepared to engage with Martha fully. What lay ahead remained uncertain, but Emily had decided that her worth and voice mattered, and she was ready to face whatever came next. With every fiber of her being, she walked into the fray, ready to define herself on her own terms, fueled by the thrill of potential yet shadowed by lingering doubt. In that instant, she knew the real challenge was just beginning. But would she find the strength to sustain this newfound resolve? Further ahead, a crucial choice lingered just out of reach. Emily inhaled deeply, feigning calm as she met Martha's gaze. The air felt thick around them, charged with unspoken expectations. She understood the stakes. This could be the moment that defined her against the backdrop of peer scrutiny and potential validation. My hypothesis is about the impact of temperature changes on enzyme activity, she stated, trying to keep her voice steady, though her pulse quickened in response to Martha's unwavering stare. I believed it could reveal how environmental factors influence biological processes. The words escaped as if each syllable anchored her further into her identity. Martha raised an eyebrow, the corners of her mouth twitching as if challenging Emily to falter. Interesting. But what makes you think your findings will stand up to scientific scrutiny? Isn't this just a school project after all? Her condescension was palpable, prompting an impulse within Emily to retreat, but she stood her ground, a determination hardening around her spine. Every great discovery at one point seemed insignificant. The difference lies in the resolve to question and explore, Emily fired back, embracing the tension as it fueled her resolve to be more than a mere student in the shadows. The sensation was electrifying. She felt empowered not just by her project, but by her willingness to confront that skepticism head-on. Impressive rhetoric, Martha said, now a hint of curiosity creeping into her voice. But will it impress the judges? What's your actual data? Emily shifted, realizing that while she had rehearsed her explanations, she needed to be as adept at articulating her findings as she was at defending her project. I observed notable enzyme activity at varying temperatures, and the data indicates that optimal conditions significantly enhance reaction rates. I used a controlled setup to eliminate other variables. The figures danced in her mind, grounding her amidst the storm of emotions. Martha's expression relaxed, a flash of genuine intrigue sparking in her eyes. Are you open to presenting this to the club? We could critique it thoroughly. A fresh voice like yours would shake things up. Surprise flared within Emily. It was an invitation, but a dare as well. The research club was notorious for its rigorous standards and uncompromising critiques. Could she expose her work to such scrutiny, risking more than just rejection, her very sense of self? Absolutely, she responded, without fully understanding her own impulse. Maybe this was the moment to push her limits, to discover if she could thrive in a challenging environment. Or perhaps it was a reckoning, a confrontation with her self-imposed barriers. Martha smiled, a knowing quirk of her lips that both reassured and unnerved Emily. We'll see if you handle the heat. There it was, that familiar undertone, a challenge nested within the invitation. After Martha departed, Emily's pulse stuttered. The whirlwind of emotions swirled again: doubt, elation, fear. She had articulated her findings convincingly and accepted an invitation to face her peers in a battleground that carried the weight of her insecurities. The air around her still thrummed with energy, but she felt her footing strengthen beneath her. Each step she took transformed her internal narrative. As the fair drew to a close, whispers of admiration flickered around her, igniting a fire she'd buried deep within. Emily reveled in the approval coming from unexpected places. Students who had once overlooked her now engaged in conversation, debating her findings and even asking for advice. With every exchange, a part of her realized she could be more than a passive participant in her educational journey. But as she began packing her materials, the horizon of her own expectations loomed ominously. Could she really navigate the intense scrutiny that awaited her in the club? What if her ideas didn't hold water when they faced professional critique? Would she retreat back to her fearful confines, or embrace this uncharacteristic ambition? As she left the hall, determination pulsed through her veins. mingled with an undercurrent of anxiety that reminded her of the road ahead. The choice was stark: she could either climb to those heights or step back into the shadows. Emily's nails dug into her palms as she clenched her fists, feeling the heat of conviction rise within. The path she now walked was brimming with untested possibilities, each step solidifying her resolve to confront whatever lay ahead. And just as thoughts of self-doubt began closing in, another layer of clarity emerged. She was ready to carve her identity in a world that expected the status quo. With grit and fire in her belly, she had begun the transformative journey towards who she might truly become. But the rush of ambition wasn't without trepidation, a shadow darkening her excitement. Would this newfound strength be enough to withstand the critical eyes of the club? That night, with her project at her side, she stared into the mirror. Who would she become when she faced them again? As night fell, her reflection revealed not just doubt but the flicker of tenacity that would define her. What awaited her at the next meeting of the science club would test this resolve, leading her to a confrontation she never anticipated. With a cautious breath, Emily approached the meeting room for the research club, her heart drumming a frenetic rhythm in her chest. Each step felt heavy, the floor beneath her almost sticky with anxiety and anticipation. The echoes of laughter and spirited debate drew her nearer, a cacophony reminding her of the tension she would face today. This was not just another presentation, this was sculpting the foundation of her academic identity. As she stepped through the door, the buzz of conversation slowed and shifted toward her. The expressions of her peers morphed from casual attention to an intense appraisal, their eyes piercing through the veneer of confidence she attempted to project. Martha stood at the front, perched like a hawk, her gaze resolute and unyielding. "Ah, Emily," Martha announced, her voice a clear bell cutting through the murmur of voices. "Ready to enlighten us with your findings?" The challenge was unmistakable. She was not just inviting feedback but was poised to dissect every flaw. Emily offered a tight smile, feeling the sweat bead along her brow. "Yes, thank you for the opportunity," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. As she placed her materials on the table, the familiar tingle of trepidation washed over her, threatening to unravel the careful composure she clung to. As she began her presentation, explicating her data with measured precision, the initial discomfort began to shift. With each point she made, Emily's passion for her research shone through. The thrill of discovery stirred something deeper within her, fueling her resolve to stand her ground even as Martha's question lingered impatiently in the air. "And how did you control the variables?" Martha cut in, a challenge hidden beneath a veil of feigned curiosity. "This sounds like an ambitious undertaking for someone with limited experience." Emily clenched her jaw. Her instinct was to shrink back, but instead, she seized the moment, leaning into the disruption. "I utilized a standard temperature regulation method, ensuring that each sample experienced the changes consistently. I monitored the enzyme activity meticulously to ensure no outside factors skewed the results." She could hear the faint gasps of surprise from her peers. Was it possible that her clarity was making an impression? "Interesting," Martha mused, the edge of skepticism lingering in her tone. "But what will you do if your data doesn't align with established research?" The question dangled like a precipice, a point that could send her tumbling into a chasm of self-doubt. "I'd rethink my methods or look for errors, but I'd also consider that science evolves. What if my findings challenge existing paradigms?" Emily replied, a hint of defiance lacing her words. As they flowed, she could feel the room's energy shift, her confidence igniting an ember of curiosity among her peers. During the critique, the volley of questions grew complex, and with each answer, her sense of ownership over her work blossomed. Emily began to recognize that she wasn't merely defending her project, she was advocating for her voice in the scientific community. The realization struck like a thunderbolt, illuminating a path previously hidden by self-doubt. "But that's the beauty of scientific inquiry, isn't it?" She continued, her voice gaining strength. "It's the disagreements that propel innovation. We should encourage dissenting findings, not stifle them." The silence that followed was reverberant. It felt strangely liberating, the eyes of her peers no longer scrutinizing but engaging, eyes wide with intrigue instead of derision. It was unfamiliar, thrilling, and they began debating among themselves, and Emily could see Martha's demeanor soften. It made sense, they were adapting and absorbing, curious not just about her data but about her perspective. As the meeting wrapped up, Emily felt lighter. She had ventured into the room with fear suffocating her spirit and walked out with a glimpse of control over her narrative, a poignant sense of authenticity. With a small sense of victory unfolding within her, she understood that the scrutiny would never fully fade, yet she had sparked a dialogue worth embracing. But as she exited, a lingering shadow trailed her resolve. Martha's gaze had shifted from critical to something akin to respect, yet what lay beyond this tentative truce? Was this the beginning of an alliance or merely an interlude in an adversarial relationship? With questions flickering in her mind, Emily sensed that opposition could yield unexpected alliances, lessons waiting just beyond her comfort zone. The dawning realization struck with clarity: embracing one's voice was just the beginning. The questions from her peers were merely the surface, deeper challenges awaited just out of sight, testing the very foundation she'd begun to build. What awaited her next in this journey of self-discovery, and to what lengths was she willing to go to defend her newfound identity? Momentum surged within Emily as she left the meeting room, a complex tapestry of emotions knitting together against the backdrop of newfound confidence. Yet, the lingering uncertainty gnawed at her, the contours of her progress marred by the question of Martha's true intentions. Would they be adversaries in a battle of ideas, or was there a possibility of collaboration emerging from the shadows? Days passed, each bringing her one step closer to a convergence of personal and academic development. She buried herself in her research, the once daunting labyrinth of data now transforming into a guide, illuminating her path with clarity. This newfound fortitude fueled her ambition. Emily spent late nights at her desk, poring over journals, meticulously analyzing disparate findings, seeking to bridge gaps where her perspective might fit. Yet, in the periphery, the echo of Martha's skepticism remained. To confront that echo, she needed to prepare herself for potential future exchanges, knowing their dynamic could redefine her place within the research community. She committed to a rigorous routine, practicing her presentations, honing her arguments, and anticipating the questions that could arise, a mental sparring match that sharpened her resolve. One afternoon, as Emily stared at her reflection in the glass of her office window, a realization began to settle. It dawned on her that this was not merely about defending her work against critique, it was also about crafting a narrative that others could rally around. This narrative could inspire collaboration rather than competition. Could she create a framework for dialogue that would invite dissent without fear and open space for intellectual exploration? The opportunity arose unexpectedly when the club announced a symposium on emerging research methodologies. Emily felt her pulse quicken at the prospect. This was not just a chance to present, it was an opportunity to frame her ideas within a broader context, to advocate for a culture that embraced questions as a way of generating knowledge. But the weight of expectation also pressed down, a reminder of the uncertainties that had shadowed her progress. With an intention to cement this vision, she dove into building her presentation. Weeks of labor transformed into slides that illustrated not just her findings, but the great tapestry of collective knowledge they were woven into. The narrative she shaped focused on the evolution of thought provoked by conflict, citing historical breakthroughs that arose from scientific disputes. But as the date loomed nearer, the weight of deadlines compounded the excitement. Each edit to her slides was a calculated risk. What if it resonated poorly? Would Martha tear her apart again? The nerves began to crawl back into her skin, rearing memories of doubt and hesitation. Emily wrestled with these feelings, grounding her resolve in the work that had led her to this point. When the day of the symposium arrived, tension coiled in the pit of her stomach. Before stepping into the auditorium, she paused for a moment to breathe deeply, reminding herself of the purpose behind her effort. This wasn't just about her anymore, it was about fostering an environment where dissent was celebrated as a catalyst for progress. As she stood before her audience, the same faces, yet transformed by the collective anticipation of discourse, Emily felt the flicker of courage become a flame. She launched into her presentation, weaving together her findings and the larger cultural implications. The room swayed with engagement, the initial skepticism melting into curiosity. As the first question was raised, Emily recognized the familiar voice. Martha's gaze was penetrating, but this time, it bore less of a challenge and more of an invitation. You make a compelling case for embracing dissent, Emily. But what if this dissent leads to dangerous conclusions? The room fell silent, and every ounce of her previous anxieties surged. Emily felt the heat of the moment, but instead of retreating, she leaned into it. Here it was, the confrontation she had prepared for, the moment to solidify her identity amidst conflict. I believe that's where ethical discourse comes into play, Martha. It's our responsibility to navigate that dissent. To ensure it's grounded in good science, she responded, her voice gaining strength. As an unexpected semblance of mutual interest sparked between them, Emily's heart raced with the realization that this newfound dynamic could pave the way for stronger alliances and unexpected twist in her journey. Yet, as applause broke out in the auditorium, a new question loomed: would navigating this newfound professional dynamic with Martha interfere with her vision, or would it elevate her work even further? An uncharted path stretched before her, filled with possibilities and doubts intermingled. What would it mean to navigate dissent beyond the confines of a single presentation? Emily's mind raced with the implications. It was clear that her journey had just begun. Emily's pulse still thrummed with the energy of her presentation as she left the auditorium, the applause a distant echo mingling with her thoughts. The question Martha had posed lingered ominously in her mind: what if dissent led to dangerous conclusions? Recurring doubt clashed with her newfound resolve, exposing the thin veneer of confidence she had forged. The prospect of engaging with Martha left her torn. Could collaboration truly blossom from the fire of conflict? As days turned into weeks, Emily sought refuge in her research, retreating into the familiar cadence of analyzing data and drafting papers. Yet, even surrounded by swirling statistics, she felt the specter of uncertainty stealing glances at her. If she wanted to solidify her footing in this volatile professional arena, she knew she would need to confront Martha directly. This was more than a matter of professional rivalry, it was about validating her voice in a space that had once felt alien and intimidating. During a casual gathering among colleagues, Emily overheard snippets of discussions about Martha's viewpoints. Observing their reactions to Martha's ideas ignited a mixture of frustration and determination within her. Instead of viewing Martha as merely an adversary, could she revise her perspective? Perhaps it was time to understand the underlying principles that shaped Martha's approach. After all, mastering her own stance would be essential in shaping a counternarrative that didn't just challenge but invited dialogue. Driven by this resolve, Emily reached out to Martha for a one-on-one discussion. The act felt monumental. It was a plunge into uncharted territory where she would be both vulnerable and assertive. As they secured a time to meet, Emily meticulously prepared. She drafted talking points that emphasized possibilities rather than contradictions, hoping to cultivate a constructive conversation. The day of their meeting felt rife with tension as Emily approached the cafe where they were to meet. Each step seemed heavier, her thoughts spiraling into self-doubt. But she breathed deeply, reminding herself that this was an exploration, not a battleground. She arrived early, brewing in the anticipation of igniting a dialogue that could redefine her trajectory. When Martha walked in, there was an unfamiliar softness in her demeanor. The conversation began cautiously, but as the discussion unfolded, Emily found her footing. They explored their differing perspectives on research methodologies, ethical implications of dissent, and the role of collaboration. Every time Martha made a point that contradicted Emily's ideas, instead of bristling, Emily listened intently, reframing concerns as learning opportunities. Martha, Emily ventured carefully, what if we consider dissent not just as a potential threat, but as a way to refine our ideas? Each challenge can enhance our arguments. Martha's brow furrowed thoughtfully before she responded. You make a valid point. There's value in vulnerability, in opening up to critique. It's just hard for me to trust that it will lead to constructive outcomes. As the conversation deepened, Emily noticed a shift. Both women began to share personal experiences that shaped their professional philosophies. Emily recounted her early academic disappointments and how they propelled her towards resilience. For the first time, she saw Martha as more than just a formidable opponent. She glimpsed a shared humanity masked by professional facades. With each admission, the atmosphere shifted from cautious rivalry to a burgeoning understanding. They brainstormed ideas for future collaborations, casting aside the trappings of ego. Even as Emily walked away from that meeting, she felt bolstered by the connection that had emerged from the struggle. It was exhilarating yet sobering, as she recognized the complexities inherent in professional relationships. But as she settled back into her routine, another challenge loomed on the horizon. Emily received an email announcing an upcoming panel discussion, and she was encouraged to participate alongside Martha. The flood of excitement was quickly tempered by trepidation. Would she be able to maintain the collaborative spirit they had just fostered in a public forum? Or would it devolve into a battleground of ideas once again? With this impending panel pressing on her mind, Emily's determination hardened. She would not only present her work, she would stand steadfast as an advocate for constructive dialogue even in the face of adversity. But as she prepared for this new trial, Emily began to wonder, could the invitation to the panel also be a test of her growth? Would she rise to the occasion and leverage this opportunity for deeper connection, or would old rivalries undermine her hard-fought progress? The moment of reckoning edged closer, and Emily was left grappling with the weight of this new challenge as it intertwined with her journey of self-discovery. Emily stared at the panel discussion agenda on her screen, the impending event looming like a storm cloud. The topic they were to discuss was provocative, framed to encourage dialogue but with enough potential for conflict to raise her anxious heart rate. She felt the weight of anticipation and doubt as she meticulously organized her notes. Each bullet point represented not only her perspective but the potential clash with Martha, and she wondered if the collaborative spirit they'd begun to cultivate could withstand the pressure of a public presentation. It was one thing to voice her ideas privately, it was another to defend them in front of peers, particularly in a setting that could easily devolve into a spectacle of professional one-upmanship. In the following days, Emily practiced her delivery, standing before her mirror, rehearsing each phrase with the fervor of an athlete preparing for a championship. She concentrated on her breathing, reminding herself that her goal was to foster dialogue rather than simply outshine Martha. Her rehearsals were punctuated by periods of self-reflection, revealing a deeper realization. This opportunity was not solely about her work, it was a chance to uphold the value of constructive criticism in a field often marred by rigid opinions. As her confidence grew, so did her internal debate about how to position her ideas against Martha's. She conceived a strategy to embrace dissent not as an adversary but as a crucial element in her research narrative. By viewing Martha's perspective as an opportunity to refine her own arguments, Emily could shift the frame of the discussion, inviting collaboration rather than confrontation. The day of the panel left Emily feeling exposed yet invigorated. The auditorium buzzed with an anticipatory energy, and as the audience settled into their seats, Emily could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes upon her. She took a moment, allowing herself to breathe deeply, focusing on the insights she wanted to convey rather than the voices of self-doubt that nagged at her. When it was time to present, she moved to the podium and felt a rush of adrenaline surge through her. Emily opened with a compelling question related to their main topic, one that succinctly encapsulated her research while also hinting at the significance of her divergence from commonly held views. The initial engagements with audience members went well, reinforcing her decision to embrace dissent as an avenue for discourse. Martha's rebuttals emerged, sharp and articulate. Each assertion tested Emily, pushing her to define her arguments more clearly. Yet, Emily embraced the challenge, adapting in real time, remembering their earlier conversation about valuing vulnerability. Rather than retreating, she leaned into the dialogue, responding with respect and curiosity, inviting Martha to elaborately articulate her viewpoints. As the discussion unfolded, Emily felt a surprising camaraderie develop amidst the tension. She began reintroducing Martha's counterarguments not just as obstacles but as opportunities to illustrate her own research in a way that could resonate with those listening. They were two sides of the same coin, the dissent lending clarity to the more nuanced points Emily sought to make. However, as the panel discussion drew to a close, Emily sensed a shift in the atmosphere. She witnessed several colleagues exchanging glances, the tension thickening with an unspoken challenge that threatened to fracture their temporarily forged alliance. The conversation veered dangerously close to personal attacks territory Emily had vowed to avoid. Momentarily distracted by the dynamics forming within the audience, she recalled her father's advice: sometimes it takes the storms of conflict to unveil the clearest skies. With a fresh resolve, she interjected with a question directed at both Martha and the audience, one that encouraged introspection rather than division. How can we create a space where dissent is welcomed as a necessary spark for innovation? The room went quiet, and as she scanned the faces before her, Emily felt her heart race again, this time more from a sense of empowerment than fear. This was not just about her or Martha, it was about paving a new path for everyone present. Just as she thought she had turned the tide, an unexpected voice broke through the silence. One of the audience members challenged Emily's premise in a manner that felt personal rather than academic. Instinctively, Emily tightened her grip on the podium, and her stomach flipped. The moment was critical. Would she respond defensively, upholding her fledgling confidence, or would she embrace the ambiguity of professional discourse? The stakes felt astronomically high. Emily inhaled deeply, poised at a precipice that would either solidify her growth or send her spiraling backward. Could she rise to the occasion, or would this moment become a defining point of regression? In that charged silence, everything hung in the balance. Emily's mind raced as she grappled with the challenge thrust upon her. The accusation, laden with personal undertones, reverberated in her thoughts. Did this individual truly understand the complexities of her research, or were they simply engaging in a personal vendetta? As she held her breath, the intensity of the moment wrapped around her like an encroaching fog. With a cautious but determined tone, she leaned into the microphone. I appreciate your perspective, but I believe it's vital for us to examine these topics through various lenses. The words felt like a lifeline, pulling her back from the edge of self-doubt while simultaneously testing her resolve. She recognized that this conversation could navigate into divisive crypts, but it was also an opportunity to showcase strength through vulnerability. As the audience shifted in their seats, perhaps sensing her tumultuous emotions, Emily felt a sudden clarity. What if she reframed the dialogue not as a conflict to win, but as a collective journey towards understanding? This was not just her fight, it required collaborative minds to forge new pathways. Can we discuss the implications of our research in terms of real-world applications? How do we address the potential biases that stem from our differing experiences? Emily's voice grew steadier, buoyed by her own tenacity as she embraced the discomfort that came with challenging established norms. Silence hung in the air again, the gravity of her question hanging like a weight around their collective shoulders. She could almost feel the gears turning as colleagues processed her words, some leaning forward in interest, while others remained skeptically in their seats. There was a flicker of realization, a crack in the tension she had sensed earlier. Martha, surprisingly, responded with a renewed vigor. Emily raises an important point, she emphasized, nodding while adding her insights about the need for diverse methodologies. Emily sensed an unexpected alliance formulating, a recognition from her counterpart that they could bridge their differences rather than let them divide them. With an audience now more engaged, Emily saw the dynamics shift among her peers. They began to share their thoughts, and a dialogue erupted that moved from theory to praxis, reflecting on the profound ramifications of their work. The atmosphere felt charged but collaborative, one that once teetered on hostility now resonated with the realization that every differing opinion contributed to a more enriched understanding. It was a moment of triumph, yet Emily was acutely aware of the task ahead. While the chaos had subsided, she noticed those lingering glances, the previous tension not entirely dispelled. It was evident some colleagues were still incentivized by races to validate their egos rather than pursue knowledge for the sake of growth. But this experience had catalyzed something within her. She could not afford to allow fear to dictate her responses anymore. As she took a moment to jot down her observations, a realization crystallized: she needed to channel this new awareness into her broader professional life. It was time to build an initiative centered around constructive criticism, fostering a culture where diverse viewpoints could thrive without the threat of objection. Yet, as the discussion wound down, Emily caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd: her mentor, Dr. Lin, watching intently with arms folded, a look of admiration mixed with expectation. What did she want from Emily now? Would this bold presentation lead to new opportunities, or would Dr. Lin's scrutiny unveil weaknesses she thought she had transcended? The finality of the panel faded into the background as Emily felt a new wave of uncertainty wash over her. What awaited her in the wake of this success? With new paths opening, the trajectory of her career stood poised at a new beginning, but it could just as easily spiral into unforeseen complications. In that moment, Emily felt the undercurrents of change stirring around her, leaving her anxious for the next chapter. In her journey, a chapter that could either affirm her growth or confront her in ways she had never anticipated. The weeks that followed the panel discussion proved pivotal for Emily. The invigorating dialogue ignited by her presentation reshaped not only her trajectory but also solidified her belief in her voice. Dr. Lin had approached her with an exciting proposal to co-author a paper, aiming to explore the implications of fostering constructive criticism in scientific communities. Emily felt an overwhelming surge of recognition. This was a culmination of her efforts, a testament to the journey she had traversed. As they met weekly to develop their ideas, Emily experienced growth that extended far beyond her academic prowess. She learned to value collaboration over competition, blending their differing styles into a cohesive narrative that bore the hallmark of their unique journeys. Each session felt like a master class, every discussion not just a negotiation of ideas, but an invitation to question and evolve. One day, as they drafted the final sections of their paper, Dr. Lin paused and turned to Emily. "You know, this work has the potential to influence how newcomers spearhead their research dialogues. Your insights have reshaped my view on engaging with dissent," she expressed with warmth. Emily felt a flush of pride. Here was yet another validation of her growth. Someone who had once seemed untouchable now acknowledged her influence. It marked an authentic shift both personally and professionally, a divergence from the silence that had shadowed her in classrooms and discussions. As Emily honed her craft, her self-confidence soared. No longer did she fear scrutiny or judgment. Each challenge became an opportunity to engage, defend, and articulate her ideas. She was no longer merely reacting to dissent. She was an active participant in crafting a narrative that valorized discourse. The culmination of their efforts led to their paper being accepted for publication in a respected journal. As she held the print copy, her heart swelled with a blend of satisfaction and disbelief. All those nights of labor, the anxiety, and the self-doubt melted away in that profound moment. She looked at the acknowledgement section, where Dr. Lin credited her insights, and felt the thrill of authentic recognition. Yet, the real test of her transformative journey came at the next science fair. Emily stood at her booth, pride swelling in her chest. Her project had evolved, encapsulating a year's worth of learning and resilience. It was no longer just about her individual findings but became a call to action, a message encouraging other students to embrace the fruitful nature of dissent. The fair unfolded with excitement. She engaged peers and judges alike, articulating her points with an eloquence that surprised even herself. Her earlier fears dissipated like morning mist, replaced by a steady confidence. Every discussion rekindled connections she had forged, but now, they felt balanced, an exchange of ideas rather than a contest. At the culmination of the event, Emily received news that her project had won the Best in Show award. Applause surrounded her as she accepted the recognition, but what filled her with true fulfillment was not just the trophy but the acknowledgement of her journey, the recognition of her voice. "You did it," Tom whispered excitedly, pride radiating from his face. In that moment, Emily's heart swelled with gratitude not only for her achievement but for her father's evolution too. They had both transformed, confronting deep-seated expectations that had stifled their dreams. She had broken the cycle of silence, exploring her aspirations while bridging the generational divide. In the weeks that followed, Emily was invited to speak on panels about her insights into dissent in science. Overcoming fear itself had become her project's focal point. She no longer felt confined to her small town but saw herself as a part of a larger dialogue. The dreams she had nurtured all along intertwined with her purpose of tutorial and empowerment. As she looked back on her initial struggles in the kitchen, washing dishes while grappling with her aspirations, the contrast was stark. Now, standing tall as a recognized contributor to her field, she understood profoundly that achievement stemmed from not just perseverance but also from embracing one's distinct voice. Emily had embraced her path, conquering self-doubt, and had transformed the walls that once confined her into stepping stones, leading her to her rightful place in the scientific community. The challenges that had once cast shadows around her aspirations now became the very fabric of her success. In capturing her journey, Emily recognized that the most profound transformation came from within, fueled not only by her efforts but by the willingness to champion the discourse she had once feared. This was her moment, a culmination of journey and learning, and she was ready to step into the next chapter. When Emily stretched her hands at the podium weeks later to share her experiences, she felt not only proud but complete. The fullness of her journey wrapped into a singular truth echoed in her mind: the best achievements arise when we dare to raise our voices amidst the cacophony and embrace the symphony that dissent can create. This realization didn't just resonate within her, it became a call for all who dared to dream to pursue their ambitions without fear of judgment or dispute. As she stepped off the stage, her heart brimmed with anticipation for what was to come. Now is the time for you to share in this journey of transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspirational ending. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second to share this message of empowerment. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.